They demolished my family's 80-year-old bridge with a bulldozer at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. Stood there filming on their phones, laughing while the stones my grandfather laid in 1943 crumbled into the creek. What they didn't know? I owned the only other road into their gated community. Every single one of those 85 houses. And I was about to turn their commute into a very expensive lesson about property rights. See, Darlene Pritchett, HOA president, real estate agent, professional bully, thought she could steamroll a quiet engineer because I wasn't the type to fight back. She was half right. I'm not the type to fight back. I'm the type to win. What would you do if neighbors destroyed something your grandfather built with his bare hands? Drop your revenge strategy in the comments, and before we dive in, where are you watching from? Drop your state or country below. Let's see how far this goes. My name is Garrett Sullivan, 54 years old, third-generation civil engineer, living on 127 acres in semi-rural Pennsylvania, 40 minutes outside Pittsburgh. The kind of place where you wake up to creek water hissing over limestone instead of traffic noise. Where your morning coffee comes with the smell of wet oak leaves and diesel from a Dodge pickup that's older than most marriages. The property's been in my family since 1938. My grandfather, Pop Sullivan, bought it during the Depression and built everything himself, including, in 1943, a stone and timber bridge over Blackwater Creek. It connected our land to Old Mill Road, the only route back then to 4 family farms. That bridge wasn't some weekend project. Pops pulled foundation stones from the creek bed, milled the timber himself, forged the iron brackets at the town blacksmith. It took him 8 months. I learned to fish under it as a kid. Helped my dad replace planks when I was 16. Every time I drove over it, gravel crunching under my tires, I heard Pops' voice. Build something right, it outlasts you. I'm semi-retired now, consulting gigs, some land lease income, widowed 2 years ago, daughter in Oregon, quiet life. The bridge was the last thing I had from Pops. Then, 18 months ago, a developer built Meadowbrook Estates on the old Kowalczyk farm. 85 homes, $600K and up. Gated community with an HOA that thinks it runs the county. They needed a sewage easement across my land during construction. I negotiated, got paid $12,000, everything legal and recorded. Should have been the end of it. Then I met Darlene Pritchett, 62, real estate agent, Tesla Model X, bleached bob, monogrammed everything. Elected HOA president 3 months after moving in, and apparently decided her job was to remake the world in her image. April, she knocked on my door. No call, no warning, and handed me a certified letter. It demanded I remove my bridge in 30 days. Claimed it was an eyesore and a flood hazard per HOA environmental study. I read it twice. Ma'am, that bridge is entirely on my property. Your HOA has zero authority here. She smiled like a kindergarten teacher correcting a slow child. Mr. Sullivan, we have documentation showing it's abandoned county infrastructure. We're asking you to comply with safety regulations. Your study is 4 pages from a landscaping company. There's not one engineer's signature on it. The smile tightened. We'll follow up through proper channels. She left. I threw the letter away. Figured she'd give up. 1 week later, 6:04 a.m., I woke to a diesel engine roaring on my land. Ran outside in boxer shorts and boots, no time for a shirt, and saw a bulldozer ripping through my bridge. Stone cracking, timbers splashing into the creek, dust and smoke everywhere. I screamed at the operator. He waved me off. Lady said it's county demo, got a work order. That's my bridge. He didn't stop. And then I saw them. 3 SUVs parked on my access road. Darlene and 2 HOA board members standing there filming on their phones. One of them laughing. I called 911, hands shaking. The sheriff arrived 40 minutes later. Bridge was rubble. The deputy took a report, said it was a civil matter. I'd have to sue. Darlene handed him a folder, calm as Sunday morning. Officer, we removed a hazard. We actually saved the county a lawsuit. I stood there in my underwear, covered in dust, and realized she didn't see me as a person, just an obstacle to bulldoze through. I walked back to my porch and sat. The smell of crushed limestone hung in the air. The creek ran muddy with debris, and I decided, if Darlene wants to play with property rights, I'll show her what a civil engineer knows about roads. Because I just remembered something very interesting about Old Mill Road. I hired a lawyer the next morning. Mitch Kowalski, local guy, does land disputes and the occasional DUI. We went to high school together. He took one look at the photos of my demolished bridge and said, Garrett, this is the most clear-cut property destruction case I've seen in 20 years. We filed 2 things, an emergency injunction to prevent further damage and a lawsuit for $78,000 in damages. That number wasn't random. $35K for reconstruction, $25K for historical value, $18K for emotional distress. The sheriff's report was frustratingly vague. Civil matter, no clear criminal intent. But the county building inspector confirmed what mattered. The bridge was 100% on my property, fully legal, and Darlene's crew had 0 permits for anything. Then Darlene's lawyers tried to get clever. They filed a counterclaim arguing my bridge had been in public use for 80 years. People drove over it to access Old Mill Road, so it should have become county property by now, something called adverse possession. When Mitch read their filing, he actually laughed out loud. Garrett, they clearly didn't do their homework. Why not? Because adverse possession only works if the real owner abandoned the property or stopped maintaining it. You've got 30 years of receipts for bridge repairs in your filing cabinet. He was right. I'd kept everything. Every plank replacement, every bag of gravel, every can of wood sealant. My dad taught me that. He used to say, paper trail beats memory in court every single time. We submitted decades of maintenance records, photos of my private property signs, and tax documents showing the bridge was always listed as part of my assessed property value. The judge dismissed their counterclaim in 3 weeks flat. I won't lie, that felt good. But it was just round 1. Darlene wasn't the type to back down, not even close. Her HOA doubled down and hired a Pittsburgh law firm, the kind with marble lobbies and lawyers who bill $250 an hour just to read your email. They filed a motion claiming my lawsuit was frivolous and harassment, demanded I pay $50,000 in their legal fees for wasting everyone's time. Then came the settlement offer, hand-delivered by a paralegal in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. The terms, I drop my lawsuit, they drop theirs, and, here's the kicker, they'll generously donate $5,000 to the local Veterans Fund in my grandfather's name. Mitch brought it to me at the diner, slid the paper across the table while I was halfway through a burger. It's a PR play, he said quietly. Makes them look reasonable in front of a judge. We tried to settle, Your Honor. We even offered charity in his grandfather's name. I stared at the number, $5,000. Mitch, my grandfather, spent 8 months building that bridge with his hands. They tore it down in 40 minutes while filming it on their phones, and now they want to slap his name on a charity check and call it even? That's the play. I pushed the paper back. Tell them no. You sure? This could get expensive? I'm sure. That's when Darlene went nuclear. 2 days later, a friend forwarded me screenshots from Meadowbrook's private Facebook group. The HOA had over 200 members, and apparently I was the hot topic. Darlene's post read, local landowner blocking community safety improvements, refuses to cooperate with flood mitigation efforts that could protect your families. Some people care more about old junk than their neighbor's well-being. Another post mentioned me running outside in my underwear and hinted I might be going through something after my wife's death. The comments piled on. Sounds unstable. Why is the county allowing this? Our property values are dropping because of one guy? It spread to next door within hours. Someone started a thread. Is Garrett Sullivan the problem with our neighborhood? I don't do social media. Never have. But watching strangers call me unstable and selfish, people who'd never met me, never heard my side, that stung more than I expected. Lyle called that night. Garrett, you see what they're posting about you? Yeah. You gonna respond? I was on my porch watching the sun set over the creek. The air smelled like incoming rain, that sharp, clean ozone smell mixed with mud from the bank. No. What? Why not? Because responding means I'm playing her game, and I'm not interested in Facebook wars, Lyle. Then what are you interested in? Winning. There was a pause. You got a plan? Working on it. I hung up and pulled out my old Rolodex. Yeah, I still have one. Actual paper cards in a spinning file. I'm 54. Sue me. I started flipping through names. Engineers I'd worked with over 30 years. Surveyors who owed me favors. County clerks who'd been around long enough to remember when handshake deals still meant something. People who knew where the skeletons were buried, figuratively speaking. The next morning, Rosalie Chen called. She works in the county planning office, 15 years, knows every permit application, every zoning variance, every backroom deal that slides through when nobody's watching. Garrett, she said, voice barely above a whisper, I shouldn't be telling you this. Then don't, I said. I don't want you getting in trouble. Too late. Listen, Darlene's been pushing hard for expedited approvals on some expansion plans for Meadowbrook. New community center, tennis courts, the whole 9 yards. And she's been getting them pushed through fast, suspiciously fast. How fast? 90-day reviews getting done in 3 weeks. And here's the thing. Commissioner Todd Grisham is the one signing off on everything. I wrote the name down. Should I know him? He's Darlene's boyfriend. They bought a vacation condo together in Florida last year. Public record. Both names on the deed. I stopped writing. You're telling me a county commissioner is fast-tracking permits for his girlfriend's HOA? I'm telling you that property records don't lie. What you do with that information is up to you. Rosalie, I owe you dinner. Just be careful. These people have friends in high places. I hung up and smiled for the first time in days, because people with friends in high places always make the same mistake. They think they're untouchable. And when you think you're untouchable, you get sloppy. I spent the next 2 days at the county clerk's office pulling every file I could find. Property records, easement agreements, utility right-of-ways, old survey maps from the 1940s that smelled like dust and yellowed paper. I'm a civil engineer. I've spent 3 decades reading blueprints and legal descriptions that would put most people to sleep. But that day, I was hunting, and I found something big. But I didn't tell Mitch, didn't tell Lyle, didn't tell anyone. Because in poker, you don't show your cards until the pot's worth winning. Mitch called me Friday afternoon. Darlene's lawyers are pushing for a hearing next month. They want the judge to dismiss your case entirely and award them legal fees. Let them push. Garrett, you sound way too calm for someone about to get hit with a $50,000 judgment. I was standing at my window looking toward Meadowbrook in the distance. You could barely see it through the trees, but the streetlights were starting to flicker on as dusk settled in. Mitch, I need you to trust me on this. Trust you on what? Just keep filing motions, keep them busy. I'm working on something. Working on what? I smiled. Insurance. What I didn't tell him, what I wasn't ready to tell anyone yet, was that I just discovered how to make Darlene Pritchett wish she'd never heard the name Sullivan. It all came down to one beautiful, legal, completely ironclad word, easement. I spent the next week buried in county records like a detective in a bad noir film. Except instead of whiskey and cigarettes, I had coffee and 3-ring binders that smelled like 1987. 3 full days at the clerk's office. Martha, the main clerk, stopped asking what I needed after day 2 and just started pulling document boxes before I walked in. You looking for something specific, Garrett, or just hate sunlight now? She asked on day 3. I told her a little of both, and she laughed, the kind of laugh that said she'd seen plenty of property feuds in her 30 years behind that counter and knew exactly how this would end. I pulled every document tied to Meadowbrook Estates, building permits, utility hookups, sewage approvals, environmental studies, zoning variances. Created a spreadsheet, color-coded and cross-referenced like I was preparing for trial. My daughter would have been proud, or maybe concerned for my mental health. That's when I found the crack in Darlene's armor. Meadowbrook's sewage system, a private treatment plant serving all 85 homes, had received conditional approval from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection back in 2023. That word conditional is important. It meant temporary approval pending final upgrades and inspection within 18 months. I checked the deadline. 14 months ago. They'd missed it. Then I found 2 extension requests, both approved by the DEP regional office, both with recommendation letters attached. And guess who signed those letters? Commissioner Todd Grisham, Darlene's boyfriend. I leaned back and the chair made that loud government building creak that echoes through rooms built during the Carter administration. Martha, I need copies of all this, she sighed. How many trees we killing today? I grinned. All of them. That night I called Brianna Holt, my former intern, now an environmental engineer in Philadelphia with more credentials than I can pronounce. Garrett Sullivan, she answered over stadium noise. This better be good. Phillies are losing and you're interrupting my suffering. I explained the expired permit situation, and she whistled low through her teeth. If they're operating on an expired conditional permit, that's a violation. DEP won't catch it unless someone complains, but once it's flagged, mandatory inspection within 60 days. If the system fails, they could get shut down entirely. Residents would have to truck out sewage at $400 per household per month until repairs are done. Could take half a year. I asked if she could send me the complaint form. She paused. Garrett, you file this, you're going nuclear. You sure? I told her I'd think about it, but I didn't need to think long. The next day, Darlene made my decision for me. I got 3 county code enforcement citations delivered by certified mail, all dated the same day. First citation, unlicensed junk vehicle for my dad's 1979 F-150 sitting behind my barn. It had been there 15 years, never bothered anyone, Second, unsecured burn pile for an ash heap from clearing brush. Third, illegal signage, because my no trespassing signs were apparently 2 inches too tall per township code. Each violation carried $150 per day fines if not fixed within 10 days. I called the code enforcement officer, a nervous kid named Tyler who couldn't have been older than 24. Tyler, I've lived here my whole life. Why am I suddenly getting citations for stuff that's been here for years? He hesitated, then dropped his voice. Mr. Sullivan, I was told to drive by your property daily and document violations. I'm just doing my job. I asked who gave the order. He wouldn't say, but he didn't have to. Only one person had that kind of pull with the township. I took photos of the citations and texted them to Lyle. He called back immediately, furious. Garrett, nobody else in this township's gotten a citation in 6 months. This is targeted harassment. I told him I knew, and I told him what I was planning to do about it. There was a long silence on his end. Then he started laughing. That deep, wheezing laugh he gets when something's either brilliant or completely insane. You're really going to do it? He asked. I said yes. Then I want a front row seat when this blows up, he said. That afternoon, I filled out Brianna's DEP complaint form, attached copies of the expired permit and Grisham's recommendation letters, and dropped it in the mail. Then I called Mitch and told him to file the code enforcement counter-complaint, harassment, selective enforcement, abuse of authority. While I had him on the phone, I asked him to pull one more document for me, the original plat map for Old Mill Road, dating back to 1952. He asked why. I told him I'd explain later, but I had a hunch about something that might change the entire game. He said he'd have it by end of week. I hung up and stood on my porch, watching the sun drop behind the tree line. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass from a neighbor's lawn and the faint diesel exhaust from Highway 29 a mile away. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear Meadowbrook's landscaping crew running leaf blowers, that high-pitched whine that never quite stops in gated communities. I smiled because in about 60 days, the DEP was going to show up at Darlene's door with clipboards and bad news, and she'd have no idea I was the one who invited them. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's paperwork filed in triplicate with a government agency that doesn't care who your boyfriend is. The code enforcement citations kept coming. Every 3 days, like clockwork, Tyler, the nervous code officer, would show up with a new violation. My mailbox was 6 inches too far from the road. My gravel driveway had excessive dust concerns. My firewood stack was visible from public right-of-way and constitutes visual blight. Each citation carried the same threat, $150 per day if not remedied within 10 days. I fixed the first few just to avoid the hassle, but by the 5th citation, I stopped, called Mitch instead. This is harassment, he said flatly. Document everything. We'll bury them in court. But court takes time, and Darlene knew it. She was bleeding me with 1,000 small cuts, hoping I'd give up before the real fight even started. Then I got an unexpected visitor. Sunday afternoon, a man in his early 50s knocked on my door, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Sullivan, my name's Ken Ashford. I live in Meadowbrook. I need to talk to you about Darlene Pritchett. I invited him in, made coffee, and waited. Kent sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around his mug, like he needed the warmth. I'm the HOA treasurer, he said quietly. Elected position, and I've been documenting financial irregularities for 6 months. He pulled a folder from his bag and spread documents across the table, bank statements, invoices, meeting minutes with dates that didn't match. Darlene's been paying herself consulting fees, $4,000 a month. It's not in the bylaws. Nobody voted on it. And this, he tapped an invoice dated the day after my bridge was demolished. She used HOA funds to pay for your bridge demolition. $28,000, listed it as emergency infrastructure repair, no board vote. She falsified the meeting minutes afterward to make it look legitimate. I stared at the numbers. $28,000 of other people's money, spent to destroy my family's bridge because she wanted it gone. Ken, why are you showing me this? He met my eyes. Because what she did to you was wrong, and because she fined my wife $500 for planting the wrong color roses. I'm tired of living under a tyrant. I asked if he understood the risk. If Darlene found out he'd leaked financial records to me, she'd make his life hell. He smiled grimly. She already does. At least this way I'm fighting back. I made copies of everything and shook his hand. You're a good man, Kent. He shrugged. I'm just an accountant who hates fraud. After he left, I sat with the documents and started piecing together the pattern. The expired septic permit. Todd Grisham's signed recommendation letters, the falsified HOA minutes, the embezzlement. It wasn't just about my bridge anymore. Darlene and her boyfriend had built a little empire of corruption, and they'd gotten away with it because nobody had bothered to look closely, until now. I picked up my phone and called Andrea Walsh, a local investigative journalist who'd written a few solid pieces about county corruption over the years. "Andrea, it's Garrett Sullivan. I've got a story for you." She sounded interested but cautious. "About the bridge dispute? I read about that." I told her it was bigger, much bigger. "How about county commissioners taking money from developers, HOA presidents embezzling and committing fraud, environmental permits being covered up?" Long pause. "Mr. Sullivan, if you're serious, I need documentation." I told her I had 400 pages of it. "When can we meet?" she asked. We met the next day at a diner halfway to Pittsburgh. I brought the binder. She brought a recorder and a legal pad. For 2 hours, I walked her through everything. The bridge demolition, the code enforcement harassment, Grisham's conflict of interest, the expired septic permit, Kent's financial records showing embezzlement and fraud. She took notes, asked sharp questions, requested copies of key documents. When I finished, she sat back and exhaled slowly. "This is a legitimate scandal," she said. "But I need to verify some of this independently before I can publish. Give me a week." I told her to take whatever time she needed, but to be careful, Darlene had friends in the county government. Andrea smiled. "Mr. Sullivan, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know how to protect my sources." She published 5 days later. The headline ran online first. "County Commissioner linked to developer in land dispute. Ethics questions raised." The article laid out Grisham's relationship with Darlene, the expedited permits, the campaign contribution from Meadowbrook's HOA PAC, with Darlene listed as treasurer. It didn't mention the embezzlement yet. Andrea was holding that for a follow-up once she verified Kent's documents independently, but the damage was immediate. The article got picked up by a Pittsburgh TV station. By that evening, news vans were parked outside the county courthouse. Grisham released a statement denying wrongdoing, but the county ethics board announced an investigation within 48 hours. My phone started ringing. Other reporters wanting interviews, township supervisors suddenly interested in my code enforcement complaints, even a few Meadowbrook residents reaching out to apologize. I didn't answer most of the calls, just sat on my porch, watching the sun set over the creek, and smiled. Because for the first time since that bulldozer showed up, Darlene wasn't controlling the story anymore. I was. And the best part? She had no idea how much more ammunition I still had. The road, the expired easement, the DEP complaint working its way through the bureaucracy. I was just getting started. Lyle texted me that night. "You magnificent bastard, she's spiraling." I texted back, "Good." The media firestorm around Grisham lasted 3 days before the real bombshell dropped. Andrea called me Tuesday morning, voice buzzing with energy. "Garrett, I verified Kent's documents. The embezzlement story runs tomorrow, but I wanted to give you a heads up, it's going to get ugly." I thanked her and hung up, then I called Mitch. "It's time," I said. "Time to show them what I really own." Wednesday morning, while Andrea's embezzlement article was setting the internet on fire, Mitch filed 2 documents with the county. First, formal notice that I was withdrawing public access to Old Mill Road, effective in 30 days. Second, notification that the utility easement Meadowbrook had been using for sewage and power lines across my property had expired due to a clerical error in the original agreement, and I was not renewing it. Both documents were public record. Both were completely legal. And both landed like grenades in the middle of Darlene's already burning world. My phone rang within an hour, county engineer's office, sounding panicked. "Mr. Sullivan, we're reviewing your filing about Old Mill Road. Our records show this as a public road." I explained calmly that their records were wrong. The road had never been formally deeded to the county, and I had the 1952 survey documents to prove it. Long silence on the other end, then the sound of papers shuffling frantically. "Sir, if you close that road, Meadowbrook Estates loses its secondary emergency access route. Fire department response time would triple during rush hour." I told him that wasn't my problem. I was simply exercising my legal rights as a private property owner. He said he'd need to escalate this and hung up so fast I heard the phone rattle against the receiver. Then the calls started flooding in. Fire chief, township supervisors, county planning director, everyone suddenly very concerned about public safety and emergency access and community welfare. I gave them all the same answer. The road is private, always has been, and I'm within my rights to restrict access. If Meadowbrook wants continued use, they're welcome to negotiate an easement agreement at fair market rates. One supervisor actually sputtered, "But Mr. Sullivan, you can't just—" I cut him off politely. "Actually, sir, I can. Check the deed records." By noon, the story had leaked to reporters. Andrea called again, barely containing her excitement. "Garrett, is it true you own the only alternate route into Meadowbrook?" I confirmed it. She laughed, that sharp, disbelieving laugh journalists get when a story gets better than they imagined. "This is incredible. They destroyed your bridge and you own their backup road? That's almost poetic." I told her it gets better. Their sewage and power easement had also expired, meaning they'd been running utilities across my land illegally for months. She asked if I was really going to cut off their access. I said I hadn't decided yet, but fair compensation for use of my property seemed reasonable. "What's fair compensation?" she asked. I leaned back in my chair, heard that satisfying creak of old wood. A rebuilt bridge would be a good start. The panic inside Meadowbrook was immediate and total. Emergency HOA meeting called for Thursday night. Kent texted me updates in real time, residents shouting, some demanding Darlene resign, others talking about lawsuits, a few already calling real estate agents to list their homes before property values tanked. The meeting recording leaked to me by Friday morning, probably from 3 different sources. I sat in my truck in the driveway listening to it, windows down, afternoon sun warm on my arm, and the smell of cut hay drifting in from a neighbor's field. Darlene's voice came through shaky and defensive, trying to calm 85 panicking homeowners. "This is a legal technicality. Our lawyers are handling it. There's no real threat." But a resident cut her off, voice shaking with fury. "You told us everything was handled. Now we find out our president embezzled HOA funds and we might lose sewage service?" Another voice, older and frightened. "My mother is 78. What happens if there's a medical emergency and ambulances can't get through because you pissed off the wrong neighbor?" Darlene had no good answers, just stammering excuses and empty promises. And me? I sat on my porch that Friday evening, watching the sun sink behind the trees, the sky going orange and purple like a bruise, the creek making that gentle rushing sound it always makes when the water's high. I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. Not revenge yet, just the simple, satisfying knowledge that I held every card that mattered. Infrastructure is power. Roads, utilities, access, these aren't luxuries. They're necessities. And I owned them all. My phone buzzed. Text from Lyle. "Bro, Meadowbrook Facebook group is melting down. This is better than any poker game we've ever played." I smiled and typed back, "Game's not over yet. Now comes the fun part." Saturday morning, my kitchen became a war room. 5 people showed up by 9 a.m., and the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the nervous energy of people about to plan something that could either be brilliant or completely backfire. Mitch sat at the head of my kitchen table with legal pads stacked like ammunition. Lyle leaned against the counter grinning like a kid on Christmas. Rosalie from the county planning office brought her laptop and a flash drive that she definitely wasn't supposed to have. Judge Harlan Meeks, retired, 76, still sharp as a tack, sat reading through documents with glasses perched on his nose. And Brianna Holt, my former intern turned environmental engineer, had driven up from Philadelphia with a folder full of DEP regulations thick enough to kill someone. "All right," Mitch said, clicking his pen in that rhythm he does when he's thinking. "Let's talk endgame. Garrett's got leverage, the road, the expired easement, public sympathy, Darlene under investigation for embezzlement. Question is, what do you actually want?" I'd been thinking about this for days. Not revenge, not to hurt innocent people, just justice. "I want my bridge rebuilt," I said. "Historically accurate, proper materials, done right. I want a written apology from the HOA published in the local paper. I want fair compensation for the easement going forward, market rate, not whatever lowball number they'll try. And I want Darlene Pritchett out of the HOA presidency." The room went quiet for a second. Then Judge Meeks looked at me over his glasses. "Son, that's all reasonable. But here's what you need to understand. If you push too hard, you become the villain. Judges and juries remember vindictive winners. You need to give them a way to save face, barely an inch, but something." Lyle snorted. "Judge, she demolished his grandfather's bridge while filming it and laughing. How much face does she deserve?" The judge smiled slightly. "Legally? None. Strategically? Just enough that Garrett walks away looking like a hero instead of a bully." I asked how we do that. Brianna jumped in first. "The DEP complaint I helped you file is already in the system. They'll inspect Meadowbrook's sewage treatment plant within 60 days. When, not if, when it fails inspection, the state mandates upgrades or shuts them down. That's not you being vindictive. That's bureaucracy doing what it does." Rosalie nodded. "Same with the ethics investigation on Grisham. That's official now. Once those findings go public, it shows a pattern of corruption that has nothing to do with personal revenge. You're just the citizen who noticed and reported it. Lyle grinned. So you're letting the government be the bad guy while you sit back looking reasonable. I love it. Mitch pulled out a draft settlement proposal, 40 pages, exhibits attached, the kind of document that makes normal people's eyes glaze over but makes lawyers weep with joy. Here's the play. We request a public mediation hearing at the township supervisors meeting. It's recorded, it's open to the public, and Darlene can't hide behind her lawyers in some private conference room. You present your terms in front of residents, media, everyone. If she accepts, great. If she refuses, you look reasonable and she looks like the problem. I liked that. Sunshine is the best disinfectant, as they say. Judge Meeks tapped the document. Terms need to be specific. No vague language she can weasel out of later. Brianna suggested numbers. For the easement renewal, $500 per month for 20 years. That's fair market rate for commercial utility access in rural Pennsylvania. I checked 3 comparable properties. For the bridge reconstruction, you get bids from 3 licensed contractors and the HOA pays the median bid. No negotiation, no substitutions. Mitch wrote it down. And the apology? I thought carefully. It needs to name me personally, name my grandfather, acknowledge that the demolition was unauthorized and wrong, and it runs in the Township Gazette for 2 consecutive weeks, plus gets posted at the Meadowbrook main entrance where everyone can see it. Rosalie grinned. Oh, Darlene's going to hate that. I shrugged. She should have thought about that before she brought the bulldozer. Then we talked risks. What if Darlene flat out refused? Mitch explained I could legally close the road and terminate the easement, but it would hurt innocent residents, and public opinion could turn against me. You don't want to be the guy who blocked Grandma's ambulance, he said bluntly. Judge Meeks suggested a compromise. Close the road to regular traffic, but grant an exception for emergency services. Fire trucks, ambulances, police, they still have access. Soccer moms and commuters? They take the long way around Highway 29. That pressures the HOA without endangering lives. Brianna added, same with utilities. You don't shut them off immediately. You notify them the easement expired and give 30 days to negotiate renewal. They ignore you, then you pull the plug. We spent another hour on contingencies. What if she countersues? What if residents start a petition? What if the media spins this against me? By the time everyone left around noon, I had a plan that felt bulletproof and a binder so thick you could use it as a doorstop. Lyle was the last one out. He clapped my shoulder at the door. Garrett, I've known you 30 years, never seen you like this. I asked what he meant. He grinned, focused, a little scary, honestly. Remind me never to piss you off. I laughed. Lyle, I'm not scary. I'm just an engineer who actually read the contracts. After they left, I stood at my kitchen window looking toward Meadowbrook. You could barely see it through the trees, but I knew it was there. Those perfect streets and matching mailboxes and the HOA president who thought rules didn't apply to her. The house smelled like coffee grounds and old paper, that musty scent legal documents get when they've been photocopied too many times. Outside, a crow landed on my porch railing and cocked its head at me, like it was asking what came next. I smiled. What came next was simple. I was going to give Darlene Pritchett exactly one chance to do the right thing, and when she didn't take it, because people like her never do, I was going to show her what happens when you tear down a bridge owned by someone who actually knows how infrastructure works. Darlene's world was collapsing, and desperate people do desperate things. I should have seen it coming. Monday night, 2:30 a.m., I woke to chainsaws ripping through the darkness. Not distant, close, on my land. I grabbed my phone, pulled on boots over sweatpants, and ran outside. 2 men I'd never seen were cutting down oaks along Old Mill Road's boundary, dropping 60-year-old trees across the road in clouds of sawdust. The smell of fresh-cut wood and chainsaw exhaust filled the air, mixed with that sharp ozone scent night air gets in Pennsylvania spring. I started filming as I ran toward them, shouting over the noise. "This is private property. What the hell are you doing?" The guy running the chainsaw looked up, saw me, yelled something to his partner. They dropped tools and sprinted for a white rental pickup. I got close enough to film faces, got the truck in frame as they peeled out, gravel spraying, called 911 immediately, hands shaking. Told the dispatcher vandals were destroying my property, gave the location, said I had video evidence. She said a deputy was 20 minutes out. I walked the damage with my phone flashlight. 4 trees down, 2 completely blocking the road, 2 more halfway cut and leaning dangerously. If I hadn't woken up, they'd have finished and Old Mill Road would have been impassable for weeks. The message was clear. If they couldn't negotiate access to my road, they'd make sure nobody could use it. Destroy the leverage. I stood there surrounded by sawdust and the sound of settling branches, feeling my jaw tighten. This wasn't a legal fight anymore. This was war. Deputy Collins arrived 40 minutes later, same guy who'd handled my bridge demolition. He walked the scene, took photos, watched my video 3 times. "Garrett, this is criminal mischief minimum, possibly conspiracy. You pressing charges?" I asked if he could ID them from the footage. He zoomed in on a frame showing the truck's rental company logo. "I'll run it down." Then he pointed at something I'd missed, a work glove dropped in the rush to escape. He bagged it. "Might get prints. Watch your back, Garrett. You've made enemies." Collins called the next morning. "Ran the rental. Paid for with a credit card belonging to Marcus Pritchett." I asked who that was. "Darlene Pritchett's son, 29, works in her real estate office." There it was. I asked if we could charge him. Collins hesitated. "We can prove he rented the truck, that's it. Unless one of those guys testifies Darlene ordered it, we can't tie her directly." I asked his advice. "Honestly, save it. If you press charges now, it becomes a criminal case, ties up your civil suit for months. But as leverage in negotiations, it's dynamite." I called Mitch immediately. He listened, then started chuckling, that dark lawyer laugh that means someone screwed up badly. "Garrett, don't use this yet. Save it for mediation. When Darlene's sitting across from you in front of the township, media, everyone, you calmly present this video. You don't even accuse her, just explain that her son rented the truck used to commit a crime on your property. Let people draw their own conclusions." I smiled for the first time since the chainsaws woke me. "Chess, not checkers," Mitch agreed. "And right now, you're 3 moves ahead." But Darlene wasn't finished. Over the next week, things got weirder. Anonymous calls, someone breathing, then hanging up, 5 times in 3 days. My truck got egged while parked at the diner, yolk dried into the paint in the sun. Then Thursday morning, I found a dead raccoon on my porch, positioned deliberately, clearly left as a message. None of it was prosecutable, but it was designed to scare me, make me back down. Lyle came over that evening, saw the raccoon situation, shook his head. "She's spiraling. This is what bullies do when they lose. They lash out." I asked if it would escalate. He met my eyes. "Probably. But you've got cameras, documentation, law on your side. She's got desperation. I know which hand I'd rather hold." Friday, I attended the township supervisors meeting, sat in back, said nothing. But my presence was noticed. During public comment, 3 Meadowbrook residents complained about me, holding the community hostage, endangering public safety. One even suggested eminent domain to seize my road. The supervisors asked if I wanted to respond. I stood, kept my voice level. "I'm not holding anyone hostage. I'm exercising property rights. If Meadowbrook wants access, they can negotiate through my attorney. But I'm not giving away what I own for free, especially not to people who destroyed my family's bridge." I sat down. One supervisor nodded. "Mr. Sullivan, we're scheduling a public mediation hearing 2 weeks from today." I thanked him and left. Walking to my truck, I spotted Darlene's Tesla 3 spaces over. She sat in the driver's seat staring at me through the windshield. We locked eyes. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked terrified. Good. In 2 weeks, in front of everyone, I'd lay out exactly what she'd done, what it cost, and what it would take to fix. And there'd be nowhere left to hide. The week before mediation, everything accelerated. Sunday afternoon, Kent knocked on my door looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. "Garrett, we need to talk. Now." I let him in, made coffee that neither of us drank, and waited. He pulled out a laptop and a stack of documents printed so hastily the pages were still warm. I got removed as HOA treasurer Friday. Darlene called an emergency board vote, said I was creating unnecessary conflict. 3 of her cronies voted me out. He opened the laptop. But before they locked me out of the accounts, I downloaded everything. 2 years of bank statements, every transaction, every invoice. He turned the screen toward me. Highlighted line items told a story that made my stomach turn. Darlene had been paying herself consulting fees, $4,000 a month for 18 months. $72,000 total, never approved by residents, never even mentioned in meeting minutes. Then there were vendor payments to her nephew's landscaping company, her brother-in-law's HVAC business, all inflated beyond reason. Conservative estimate, Kent said quietly. She's funneled about $200,000 out of HOA reserves into family pockets. I stared at the numbers, feeling that cold anger you get when you realize someone's corruption goes deeper than you imagined. "Kent, why bring this to me? Why not the police?" He closed the laptop and I heard that plastic click that sounds too loud in a quiet room. "I tried. Filed a DA complaint Friday. They said it's a civil matter. Hire a lawyer and sue. They won't prosecute unless there's clear fraud, and Darlene's been smart. Everything's documented as business expenses, just massively inflated and paid to relatives. It's corruption the legal system won't touch. He met my eyes. So I'm bringing it to you. You're the only person fighting her and actually winning. I called Mitch immediately, put him on speaker. After Kent walked through the documents, Mitch whistled low. This is textbook self-dealing and breach of fiduciary duty. HOA members can sue her personally, and Garrett, this destroys what's left of her credibility before mediation. I asked if we could use it directly. Mitch thought carefully. You're not a Meadowbrook resident, so their finances aren't your fight. But if Kent goes public... Kent didn't hesitate. I'll testify. I'll give interviews. Whatever it takes. She's been stealing from 85 families, including mine. I called Andrea Walsh. Within 2 hours, she was at the diner, laptop open, cross-checking Kent's evidence against public records. Mr. Ashford, I'll need to verify this independently before publishing. Kent handed her a flash drive. Everything's there. Bank records, invoices, meeting minutes. Verify however you need. She looked at me. Garrett, this doesn't directly involve your dispute. I shrugged. I know, but it's the truth, and I'm tired of watching her get away with things. The article dropped Wednesday morning, 3 days before mediation. Meadowbrook HOA president accused of self-dealing. Documents show suspicious payments to family. Andrea had contacted vendors, confirmed inflated pricing, got one to admit giving Darlene referral kickbacks. She'd interviewed 4 residents anonymously. The story was bulletproof. By noon, Meadowbrook's Facebook group was melting down. Residents demanding Darlene resign, threatening lawsuits, starting recall petitions. The DA's office suddenly decided to review the matter. And Darlene? Complete silence. No statement, no defense. Her office voicemail full. Social media dark. Thursday night, Kent texted, emergency HOA meeting, board voting on Darlene's removal. FYI. I didn't attend. Wasn't my place. But Kent sent updates. 70 residents packed the room. Darlene tried defending herself, claimed payments were standard practice and approved by previous boards. Nobody bought it. The board voted 4-1 to remove her as president effective immediately. Then residents voted to suspend her membership pending a full audit and potential legal action. Kent's final text. She walked out, people shouting the whole way to her car, "It's over." I sat on my porch reading those texts as dusk settled. The air smelled like coming rain, that heavy, electric smell that makes your skin tingle. The creek was running high, making more noise than usual, and in the distance I heard a dog barking at something only it could see. My phone rang, Lyle laughing. "Did you see? She's finished. They're talking criminal charges. And mediation's Friday, she's showing up with nothing." I told him I'd heard. He kept going. "Garrett, you won. She's destroyed." But that's not how it felt. Winning wasn't about destroying Darlene. It was about getting what I was owed. And I wasn't owed her humiliation. I was owed a bridge. I called Mitch. Friday's mediation, I want to be clear. I'm not going there to gloat or twist the knife. I'm going to get my bridge rebuilt and move on with my life. Long pause on his end. Garrett, you're more generous than she deserves. But don't give away too much. She still owes you everything. I watched the sun disappear behind the tree line, turning the clouds the color of a fresh bruise. Mitch, I know what she owes, but I also know Pops wouldn't want me winning by being cruel. He'd want me winning by being right. Mitch chuckled softly. All right then, see you Friday. Let's finish this. Friday night, 7 p.m., the township municipal building was packed beyond capacity. Fire marshal limit was 150. At least 200 people crammed inside, standing along walls, sitting in aisles. The air smelled like burnt coffee and nervous sweat and that old building mustiness government offices get. 3 TV crews. Live stream running with over 5,000 watching. I sat at one table with Mitch. Across from us, Darlene and a lawyer who looked fresh out of law school, probably the only one willing to take her case. She looked diminished. Hair not perfect. No Tesla keys. No monogrammed anything. Just someone who'd run out of road. Supervisor Chen spoke first. This mediation addresses the dispute between Mr. Garrett Sullivan and Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Mr. Sullivan requested this hearing. Please proceed. I stood. Didn't need notes. I'd lived this story for 2 months. Supervisors, neighbors, media, thank you for being here. I'll keep this simple. I clicked Mitch's laptop. Photos appeared on the screen. My bridge before demolition, 80 years old and solid. April 16th, 6:04 a.m. Meadowbrook HOA President Darlene Pritchett ordered this bridge demolished. Built by my grandfather in 1943. on my property, fully legal, destroyed without permission, without permits, without authority. Next photo. The bulldozer mid-demolition, Darlene and board members visible in background with phones. Here they are watching and filming. One is laughing. The room went silent except for camera shutters. I clicked through Facebook screenshots. After destroying my bridge, Miss Pritchett called me unstable on social media, claimed I was blocking safety improvements. Next, code enforcement citations. Then came harassment, weekly violations for things that existed on my property for decades. Code enforcement admitted they'd been ordered to target me. Darlene's lawyer whispered urgently. She stared at the table. Then this. I played the chainsaw video. Men cutting trees at 2:30 a.m., fleeing when confronted. Sabotage attempt. Sheriff traced the rental truck to Marcus Pritchett's credit card, her son. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Darlene went pale. I haven't pressed charges because I'm not interested in revenge. I want justice. I turned off the projector and faced the room directly. During this fight, I discovered something. I own Old Mill Road, the private road that's Meadowbrook's emergency access. I have the 1952 deed, their utility easement for sewage and power, expired 14 months ago due to their clerical error. They've been operating illegally. Several Meadowbrook residents looked sick. I could close that road tomorrow, terminate utilities. Legally, I'd be within my rights. I paused. But I won't, because that punishes innocent people. And they're not who I'm angry at. I pulled out papers. Here's what makes this right. Meadowbrook pays $78,000 for bridge damages. They fund reconstruction. Historically accurate, about $120 total. Written apology published in the Gazette for 2 weeks. New easement, $500 monthly for 20 years, plus free emergency vehicle access because I'm not cruel. And all harassment stops. No more weaponized code enforcement. No more sabotage. No more attacks. I looked at Darlene. You thought you could bulldoze a quiet engineer because I wouldn't fight back. You were half right. I didn't fight back. I fought smart. Read the deeds, pulled the permits, documented everything. My voice dropped. My grandfather spent 8 months building that bridge with his hands. You destroyed it in 40 minutes while laughing. So here's what happens. Meadowbrook accepts these terms, or I close Old Mill Road Monday and terminate utilities in 30 days. The room erupted. Reporters shouting, residents yelling questions. Chen gavelled for order. After a chaotic minute, he called 15-minute recess. Darlene and her lawyer huddled in the corner. I sat down, hands steady for the first time in weeks. When we reconvened, Meadowbrook's interim board president, a nervous accountant named Patterson, stood. Mr. Sullivan, the interim board has reviewed your terms. We accept. All of them. We'll have formal documents prepared by Monday. He looked at Darlene with something like disgust. And on behalf of the community, I apologize. What happened to your bridge was wrong. What happened after was worse. We'll make it right. Supervisor Chen nodded. Miss Pritchett, do you have anything to add? She stood slowly, face blank. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she said quietly, I acted in what I believed were the community's best interests. That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement, just deflection. Chen's expression hardened. The terms are accepted. This mediation is concluded. The room exploded. Reporters rushing forward, residents mobbing Patterson with questions, cameras everywhere. I stayed seated watching Darlene walk toward the exit. People moved aside like she was contagious. At the door, she turned and looked at me one last time. I didn't look away. Didn't gloat, just held her gaze until she left. Outside in the parking lot, the night air was cool and clean, smelling like fresh-cut grass from the township lawn. Lyle was waiting by my truck, grinning. You did it, man. You actually did it. Mitch clapped my shoulder. Garrett, in 30 years of law, I've never seen someone dismantle an opponent that thoroughly without raising their voice. I looked up at the stars. Clear night. Milky Way visible like spilled salt. I didn't dismantle her, Mitch. She dismantled herself. I just showed everyone the receipts. We stood there a moment. Then I climbed in my truck, drove home, sat on my porch, and for the first time since that bulldozer showed up, I felt something close to peace. The settlement documents were signed by Wednesday. $78,000 in damages hit my account by Friday. The written apology ran in the Township Gazette the following week, half a page, formal and stiff, signed by Meadowbrook's interim board. Darlene's name was conspicuously absent, but everyone knew. The second week it ran, someone posted a photo of it on the Meadowbrook entrance sign. It stayed there for 3 days before anyone took it down. Bridge reconstruction started in early June. I hired a local stonemason recommended by the Historical Society. guy named Vernon, who'd restored 3 covered bridges in the county and understood what historically accurate actually meant. We used stones pulled from the creek, same as Pops had done, plus new timber milled from oaks on my property. The design was an exact replica of the 1943 bridge, but engineered to modern safety standards. Cost came in at $118,000, under budget. Vernon said that never happens, but I think he undercharged because he believed in what we were building. On a Saturday in July, I invited the township to a stone setting day volunteer event where people could help place stones under Vernon's supervision. I expected maybe 20 people. 67 showed up. Families with kids, retirees, a handful of Meadowbrook residents who wanted to be part of fixing what their HOA had broken. We worked from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., and someone organized a potluck lunch on my lawn. Fried chicken, potato salad, pies that disappeared faster than I could count. Kids painted decorative stones for the approach path. One little girl, maybe 7, asked why the bridge mattered so much. I told her my grandfather built it so people could help each other, and that's what bridges are for. She nodded like that made perfect sense and went back to painting flowers on her rock. The dedication ceremony happened in September. Small plaque installed on a limestone post. Sullivan Bridge, built 1943 by William Pops Sullivan, rebuilt 2025 by the community. My daughter flew in from Oregon with my 2 grandkids, ages 5 and 3. Judge Meeks gave a short speech about legacy and accountability that made half the crowd tear up. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it brief. Pops always said a bridge connects people. This one almost divided us, but in the end, it brought us together. That's what he would have wanted. My granddaughter ran across the bridge laughing, and that sound, her joy mixed with the creek rushing below and the smell of fresh oak planks, that was the moment I knew we'd done it right. The bigger impact came later. I established the Pops Sullivan Trade Scholarship, annual $5,000 award for local high school graduates pursuing civil engineering, construction trades, or skilled labor. Funded it with $100,000 from the settlement in my savings, set up as a perpetual trust. First recipient was Kent's daughter, 17, wants to be a surveyor. At the award ceremony, she told me her dad talks about integrity now, about standing up when things are wrong. Said watching him help me gave her courage to speak up about things she sees. That hit me harder than I expected. Meadowbrook reformed too. New board, elected by residents, implemented transparency rules, monthly financials published online, all votes recorded, independent audits annually. Several residents thanked me personally. You saved us from worse corruption down the line, one said. I didn't feel like a savior, just felt like someone who'd refused to let a bully win. The county updated permit tracking systems after my case exposed how things had slipped through. Old Mill Road got an official historical marker from the township. And Darlene? She moved away 3 months after mediation. House sold at a loss. Last I heard, she was in Arizona. I don't think about her much anymore. 6 months after the bridge dedication, on a cold March morning, I'm sitting on my porch with coffee, watching sunrise paint the creek orange and gold. My phone buzzes. Text from Patterson, Meadowbrook's president. Mr. Sullivan, spring potluck is Saturday. You're invited as guest of honor. No pressure, just wanted you to know you're welcome. I smile and type back, I'll bring potato salad. Later that day, I walk down to the bridge, run my hand over the stones, smooth and solid, moss already starting to grow in the mortar gaps like it's been there forever. A pickup truck crosses, driver waves. I wave back. This is what Pops meant about building things that last, not just the stone and timber, the connections, the trust, the knowledge that when someone tears something down, a community can choose to build it back better. Now here's my question for you. Have you ever dealt with an out-of-control HOA, a corrupt board, or a neighbor who thought they were untouchable? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear how you fought back. And if you're currently in a battle like mine, tell us where you're stuck. This community has your back. If you loved watching justice happen, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because we've got more stories of underdogs beating the system. Share this with someone who needs to see that you can win when you're on the right side of the law and the deed. Let's make sure every bully out there knows you can't win when you're wrong and someone's paying attention. Next time, a landlord tries to evict a tenant for unauthorized repairs. Big mistake. Turns out the tenant is a licensed contractor and the building has 47 code violations. You won't believe how this ends. See you then.
That's a wrap for today's episode on HOA Stories. If you enjoyed watching Karma in action, smash that like button, comment your thoughts, and let us know if you've dealt with HOA madness too. Subscribe so you won't miss the next HOA meltdown we post.